G'day everybody and welcome to the January edition of the Fit Paddler. In this edition we talk with a very special guest. His name is Dean Gardiner. Dean, of course, has been paddling around the world for many years. He's one of the great icons in the sport and also runs some of the greatest events that we all get to enjoy around the world in paddling these days. In the interview with Dean we talk about the upcoming Mandurah Challenge and also the Doctor, which will both be running in the next couple of weekends. We also get to chat with Dean about a number of his personal issues in regard to paddling, how he got involved in the sport, what are the big ticket items he thinks in order to be able to be a good performer in downwind racing. And then of course we finish off chatting to the 9-time champion about what Molokai means to him, why he first got involved in the race and what's made him successful to win the event, only second to Oscar Chalopsky by winning the race 9 times. Dean highlights a number of issues for especially a lot of the first-timers that he believes are important to prepare for the race, and it will certainly help you quite a lot in connection with the 16-week Molokai program that we've just released that kicks off on the 27th of January. So I hope you enjoy, and we look forward to seeing you in Hawaii on May 18 this year. All the best. Bye. Okay, Dino, well, thanks very much for your time. Of course, we've been, friends for many, many years, and certainly that all started by competing against each other. And as we've moved on through our careers, you've been now running events for a number of years. But can you tell us a little bit about this year's race and about the Doctor itself to kick things off? How long has the Doctor been going now?
Doctor's been going now for about 10 years. Initially, we started it as a coastal race, but the attraction of doing an event from Rottnest into the mainland was too big, and being that the wind blows in exactly the right direction, we ended up running it from Rottnest into the mainland, and have been doing that now for about 8 years. And it's just the most ideal course for a downwind race.
Yeah, it certainly is. I've been in the event a few times, and certainly when the wind blows, which is quite, as you said, quite consistent, it's one heck of a lot of fun. But what do you think, what's the important factor in regard to ocean ski racing? Why you think we need to go from one landmass to another? I certainly have my opinions why I think it's very important for the sport, but what's your thinking behind doing that?
Well, I believe, and I think as you do, it's the heritage of the sport. It's what created these types of events. Was, I guess, if you want to look way back, it was the way the world was populated. Well, especially the Pacific was populated, and doing it on craft that have the ability to link ocean chop and utilize the water the way the craft that we have do. Then it's just a fantastic concept, and I think there's a mountain of events out there that have the ability to go around in circles or go backwards and forwards in flat conditions, but the ideal scenario, and you can see it in the growth of the sport, is to race downwind and really enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree, and we'll certainly come back to touch on that a minute when we ask a question in a couple of questions' time. What do you think about this year's race? So what's the event shaping up like? How many people look like being entered, do you think, will start, and what sort of top-line competitiveness will be there?
Yeah, well, at this stage, I think we're on course for about 350 paddlers. Ideally, I'd like to see close to 400. We've had growth every year in this event. Last year, I think we had about 330 on the line. Adding the stand-up paddleboards to the race has been good. It adds another facet to the event, but traditionally, at the moment, it's still predominantly surf skis and conditions. And like, I've been in Perth now for 2 or 3 weeks, and the pattern is looking ideal for this year's event. And I hate to put a mocker on it, but it looks like it should all come into place. So. But yeah, I would expect somewhere around the 350 mark this year. Of the top guys, you're going to have the top Aussie guys, the Bruce Taylors, Jeremy Cotter, Michael Booth, all those sorts of guys, plus the Mockies from South Africa. We have a number of European guys this year, guys from New Zealand, Hong Kong, Tahiti. So it's a really good spread of competitors.
Right. Okay. Good. Well, I mean, it's certainly out of all the downwind condition races I've ever competed in Australia, it has by far the best. certainly primarily because of the distance between two land masses, and it really generates that Dr. Breeze to help you get across the channel, which is a heck of a lot more fun than 40 degrees dead flat like I paddled at one other time. So hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, let's hope, mate, because there's no fun in paddling on the flat. And as I said, there's a mountain of races that give you the ability to be able to do that. So that's why downwind racing is so unique. And yeah, obviously the elements are something that we got to contend with, and we just try and fit the race in as best we can in the prevailing conditions. So, one year we actually reversed the race where we went to Rottnest because we had strong offshores and it looked like it wasn't going to kick around all day. And fortunately for us, it didn't kick around, and we got screaming offshore winds that is as good a course as any over to Rottnest. And that was a fantastic event as well. So, we've tried to set this event up to cater for every possible scenario, and sometimes it just doesn't happen for you. And as you witnessed a couple of years ago, or it was quite tough. So
Yeah.
that happens every now and again, but that's part of what makes this event so unique.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Well, I'd like to move on to a couple of other bits and pieces. So, all the best for the race this year, and certainly hope everyone has an enjoyable experience and no one suffers too much hardship out there in the water. So, I hope the event's a ripper.
Thanks, mate.
So, just a little bit about yourself, because a lot of people have heard of you, but we all sort of do what we do, and not many people know a lot about each other. We're in an IT age where it's very easy to find people, but it doesn't mean you really know a lot about people. So I've just got 4 topics here just to create something with a little bit of a difference that I thought people would like to know about you, because you are one of the founders of the sport. You were there in one of the very early years of the race in Hawaii. But before we get on to Hawaii, what's your philosophy about paddling? Like, what made you want to be competitive, and why did you get so keen on going overseas to Hawaii, which is really where you've made the biggest name for yourself in an event? As a competitor, what moved you to do it?
Well, initially I got into paddling because I grew up on the beach. I surfed with all my friends, and found that growing up in Perth, you didn't really surf all the time. So the paddling sort of came up. I wasn't super competitive. I just loved just jumping on a ski and going for a paddle and actually doing the exercise and being out on the water. And then as time went by, in my late teens, I sort of started racing a little bit and joined a surf club, a more competitive surf club than the one I was currently in. I still liked going away on my surfing trips and that sort of stuff, but got into paddling via that. I was a professional fisherman at the time, so I was on the water a fair bit. I was away a lot, so I still wasn't really competitive and didn't really have the training regime that a lot of people have had. So I didn't really start until very late teens, early 20s. Did the surf club stuff like yourself, and I got really bored with that pretty quickly. Not so much the racing. I loved the racing, and you and I were there for a lot of finals on the beach in various locations, and it was good to have that feeling, to have to walk down to the beach on a Sunday and be one of only 12 skis on the beach. That was a pretty good feeling, and I loved all that stuff at the national titles. But once again, I got bored with that. I found there was too much other stuff involved in that side of thing, and I looked elsewhere, and I'd heard about Grant Kenny, going over as a 16-year-old and winning this mythical race in Hawaii, and that sort of grabbed my attention. I love to travel. I love to be out on the ocean, and so I went over there in my first year, and from there it sort of just grew. At that stage, I still wasn't super competitive in the event. I got a couple of places here and there, but it took a couple of years before I actually won it, and then I found that was my real passion. It was the one thing that I felt like I knew that I could do pretty well, and that's being out in the middle of the ocean and catching chop. If it's the only thing that I'm good at in my life, well, I'm sort of happy about that, because it's been good fun. So if you get to paddle in big downwind conditions for 3 hours across the channel, then for me that's heaven. So. And, we've had a few heavens out there over the years, and I've been lucky. It's kept me involved, and I think that's what's really important about this sport is to keep involved in it, and the only way that's going to happen is producing conditions that people want to be in, and the days of bashing into a headwind for 60k and making it the world's toughest race just doesn't exist, and that's reflected in the numbers that actually do those races, and the growth really is in the downwind racing.
Yeah, look, I agree entirely. Certainly as you get older, the body doesn't enjoy being flogged to death, and training for events like that are very difficult as well. So, look, there's been no doubt, and a lot of people would question who's the greatest downwind paddler in the world. A lot of characteristics come into downwind paddling, as you're aware, being able to read oceans and understand change and currents and where the wind's coming from and how you position skis and all those things that make a great downwind paddler. But out of all the people that I've raced against, Oscar has certainly got a fantastic record in Hawaii. You certainly are not that far behind him in number of wins, being 9 total championship wins over there. And out of you guys that who I've raced against and trained against, Grant Kenny's, who are the 3 most successful guys that have crossed the channel in number of wins, I would say, while Oscar's got that little bit more power and Grant's had that more sort of sprint paddling background where he's had that faster twitch speed as well, you've tended to do a little better in actually reading the ocean without having those high horsepower veins that they've had in their body to be able to consistently be there and not only win it 9 times, but the amount of times you've been there, leading the race or within 100 metres of leading the race when you get to that last portlock point, quite clearly illustrates that you've probably got one of the best abilities to read the ocean out of anybody. So what do you think, or what is your priority? What could you tell people that is a key factor in order to be able to be good at downwind and cross Molokai doing quite well for 3 to 5 hours?
Yeah, well, firstly, you've got to know how to paddle. That's probably pretty crucial. And then I think it's just a matter of, to me, it's just a matter of perseverance. And how I learnt to paddle downwind was I was in a surf club called Floret, and I used to go down the coast from Floret on a windy Sunday afternoon. They'd throw my ski on, and I was a 13 or 14-year-old, and we'd paddle out to sea for 2 or 3k and then head back straight into Floret, and that's how I learned. I'd be coming off the whole time, but you've got to be really confident on your craft and have the ability to get back on your craft and persevere with those sorts of conditions. But ultimately, you get yourself in a position where it's just so much fun, and that's I think with everything, that's the key is you've got to enjoy it, and it might take a little bit of time to get to that point, but I think perseverance and finding that happy place is really, really important. I don't consider myself a elite athlete or anything like that. I'm just someone that enjoys paddling in the ocean, and for me it's transferred nicely into racing because it's something that I enjoy, and I'm pretty lucky there that you can do that. I think you have to still do a few grinds and a bit of hard stuff, and obviously get your paddling ability up. But you just have to look at my technique to know that I'm not really a top paddler. I just managed to be able to, put things together at the right time, and I think that's really important.
Okay, well, just very, very briefly, Dean Gardiner's an hour and a half, 2 hours into Molokai in 2014. If the wind's up and he chooses to do the race, which everyone knows that's when you turn up and like to do it. What is a thought that's going through your head, forgetting about the competitors, but just working with the conditions themselves? What is something that you try and focus on doing that some of the people that might be listening to your interview today might be able to take from what you're concentrating on about an hour and a half, 2 hours into the race?
Okay, I'll break that down because there's a big difference to me in the hour to the 2 hour, and then the 2 hour to the 3 hour. So in the first hour up to the first hour, it's just about getting everything into sync and just trying to conserve as much energy as possible, and making sure you're on track with a good course, and keeping that in mind the whole time. And then 1 to 2 hours is still conserving as best you can, and now you should be in unison and in the swing of the ocean and being able to work the runs left and right. And then 2 to 3 that's when the race really starts, and that's when I'd look over and see you on my left side and know that Oscar's 400 metres behind us and bearing down on us, and whoever else is in the race, Tim Jacobs, Lewis Laughlin, or whoever, they're all there too. So that's when I start to think about those guys and why I'm either moving away from them or they're getting closer to me, and working out, making sure that my direction's still the direction I want to be going, and 2.5 hours is when you've really got to kick, I think, and if you kick at 2.5 hours and survive, and that's anything from 2:45 through to 3:30. That's the survival phase. So if you've conserved enough in those first 2 hours, then you might have enough to charge through Portlock and paddle into the headwind for that last 2K. So, it's I pretty well unleash everything before I get to Portlock. So,
yep.
And then hopefully I can survive the rest of the way. So,
that's right. As we get older, that gets harder.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple of quickies very briefly. The greatest race you've ever had in Hawaii, what year was that, and just briefly why?
Probably for me, I'm going to give you 2. The race that a couple of years ago when you and myself and Oscar were at Portlock Point together, I thought was a really good race.
Yep.
I think we all did the best we possibly could, and it showed in 3 guys hitting Portlock within such a short space of time. I think that was an amazing event. Yep. But for me personally, and the win from a winning perspective was a race that I did, Lewis Laughlin and I. It was very, very, very calm conditions, a light tailwind. I'd been in South Africa the week before, pulled out of a race because it was flat. Had basically said I wasn't going to Molokai, got home, realised that I wanted to go to Molokai on the Thursday or Friday, flew to Hawaii, rolled up at Molokai, slept on the beach, and then woke up in the morning to the boats facing towards Oahu like they do sometimes. The boat's on anchor, so it meant the wind was slight head, but then the boat swung and a little bit of east wind started to kick in, probably around 8 to 12 knots. And I said to my friend who I was camping with at the time, I'm not going to start. And then about half an hour out from the race, it picked up a little bit more to just where you could see a white cap around the corner. And I started, it backed off, it picked up, it backed off the whole way across the channel, and Lewis and I were within 10 metres of each other the whole way across the channel. Half an hour to go, I virtually gave up. Then I had a kick. My boys on the boat yelled at me. I had a kick again, went past Lewis. He sort of faded a bit, then he fell off. He struggled to get back on for a while, which gave me a bit of a lead. I ran around Portlock. I was that buggered that I caught the first wave I could, ended up on the rocks, had to run across the rocks with my ski, took my fair bit of my rudder out, and then Lewis was at me again and we raced into the finish line. I just managed to get him. So from a race perspective, that was my best race.
Yeah, certainly a lot of mental questions pre-race and during the race to end up with the victory. It's quite a story in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was proud of myself. Let's say that.
Absolutely. So, just in no more than 10 words per answer for these particular questions, just to do with Molokai. The first race you started in Hawaii, your first year?
89.
89, beautiful. What you think is the uniqueness about Hawaii? Why is it the big draw card?
It's a crossing. The wind funnels. It has a lot of variables with regards to current, wind, and swell, and attracts good field. I guess they're the keys.
Is it the biggest paddling challenge?
Well, I think there's bigger paddling challenges.
Right.
the the biggest downwind paddling challenge.
Okay. Is it the best course? Is it the best downwind course?
Probably from a technical point of view, no, because you do have to do a lot of cutting back, which I like, but it's very, very close to being one of the best. Yep.
Okay. The key ingredient to do well in Hawaii?
Well, I guess stamina and desire.
Yep, I agree entirely. Your top or 5 important things, or your top 5 on a Dean Gardiner checklist, if you could prepare best for Molokai. This is for our first time racers, so the people that haven't done the event before. What is 5 items that you would advise them to make sure they've ticked off before leaving?
Done some downwind, or a fair bit of downwind, at least a couple of 2.5, 3 hour paddles, whether that be races or training. I don't have a huge amount of stuff that I follow.
Yeah.
And a fair bit of a speed sort of training too. It's not a paddle grind. It's a bunch of little spurts, and you've got to be competent with that. Otherwise it becomes miserable.
Okay. Yep. Beautiful. I want to mention 3 names to you, and I want you to just tell me one word of those people, or that best describes them from your perspective. You've known him a long time, Oscar.
Amazing.
He's probably one of the greatest water feeling athletes, and certainly one of the most successful Ironmen I regard of all time. Grant Kenny.
Highly skilled. Sorry, 2 words there.
Okay. And Lewis Lachlan.
An animal.
Good. Okay, mate. Well, thanks very much for your time. All the very best for the race coming up or the 2 events coming up that you're running over the next 2 weekends. And, I certainly hope that this has enlightened quite a few paddlers, not only about yourself, but the event coming up in the next couple of weeks, and Molokai on its way again in 2014.
Yeah, thanks, Clint. Thanks for your time.
No worries, buddy. Thanks a lot.